Hi, it's Bob Diamond, and we're here with my friend Tony Martinez, who is, in my view, the world-class expert in tax sales. And most importantly, about acquiring properties through the tax sale process that he does in a really different way than everybody else that eliminates a lot of the risk, a lot of the headache, and certainly a lot of difficulty. And you're going to love this, really eliminates the competition. Because, as the real estate market has gotten hotter, people are going to tax auction and in some cases paying nearly retail for properties or sometimes retail. Absolutely crazy. So, Tony's been doing this since the early 1990s. He has proprietary ways of acquiring properties that are completely different than anything else that anybody else does. And, you're coming from one of the YouTube videos where I talked about all the work that goes into preparing for a tax deed auction. And I used to buy at those auctions. I know, Tony, that you bought at those auctions. And once upon a time, it was great. If you're talking 20 years ago, it was fabulous.
30 years ago is even better.
Yes, but it's not 20 or 30 years ago today. So the opportunity has changed. But like many things in life, as things change, it just means the opportunity changes. It doesn't mean that it's not there. It just means it changes. So Tony does this in a completely different way. So we're going to talk about that during this video and just talk about a different way to do things that can make you incredible bargains. And you're going to see some of those bargains today. You're going to see examples of properties bought for jaw-droppingly low prices.
You hit the nail on the head with where tax deed sales are today. They just become increasingly competitive. And then as the market gets tighter in real estate and housing prices continue to go up, you have all of these real estate investors who are investing in, they're used to investing in foreclosures or doing fix and flips, or they're wholesaling. That, is a big one out there. And when the market is like it is right now today, that opportunity gets tougher and tougher and tougher. So what happens is you just have this slew of investors who are looking for great deals. And they hear about auctions, they know about auctions, they've heard about tax sales, they know about tax sale auctions. And we just see more and more people going to tax sale auctions than we ever have. And then now with technology, it's not just the live auctions, you have online auctions. And once you put a tax sale into an online auction, now everyone across the United States can participate in that one auction. And it's driving the prices up. And so you really do see people, if it's a property that is in a nice neighborhood and it's a nice looking property and doesn't look like it needs much work, that property is going to sell at the tax sale right about fair market value or close to it. And as you and I discussed, Bob, if you're going to buy property for fair market value, why would you go to a tax sale, right? You can just hire a real estate agent, drive around town and buy property at fair market value if you want to. So it's done two things. That highly competitive market at tax sales today has really driven the profitability of overages. So that's one really positive thing that comes out of what you and I do together, is it really drives the profitability of overages, because the higher the bid goes, the bigger the overages. So we're seeing bigger overages than we've probably ever seen in the history of tax sales. So that's one thing that happens from that perspective. So what we've done over the past 30 years is we're always looking, because it wasn't like there was no competition 30 years ago or no competition 20 years ago. We were always looking for alternative ways where we could acquire these real estate assets that are created due to delinquent property taxes. So the strategies we use today, I can't remember the last time I acquired a property at a tax deed property auction. And so our strategies are a little bit different, and it's not the easiest to explain, but it's still due to delinquent property taxes. And there's two different types of states, right? About half the states in the United States are what are called tax lien certificate states, and they offer tax lien certificates. And that's where you're actually paying someone else's delinquent tax bill for them. So you're basically acquiring the back taxes and you earn an interest rate. And then the other states do the tax details like you and I are discussing. Well, in the states that offer tax lien certificates, there are markets where there reaches a point where all the tax lien certificates that don't get acquired at the tax sales sit in the county's inventories. And they sit in the county's inventories for several years. And there's thousands and thousands, sometimes in some markets, there's tens of thousands of these tax lien certificates and all of these properties where the property taxes have went unpaid. Well, the county needs that money. These are These are non-performing assets for the county. And the county actually, as you probably already are aware, is property tax revenue is the #1 revenue source for any county in America. So when that money's not there, it really puts them in a pinch, because property taxes is what pays for police departments, fire departments, and hospitals, and ambulance services, and public school systems, and parks and recreation departments. So it's a very, very vital source of revenue for the county. So what the counties will do is they will actually foreclose on them, on all of those non-performing assets themselves, and they actually end up owning the property. So either the county owns the property, or a state entity owns the property, but they're still not performing, right? They're still not generating any property taxes. So then what they'll do is they'll either do one of two things. They'll either bring all of those houses up to an auction, and it still will be a competitive bidding auction, but there's so many of them, thousands of properties that can come up. A lot of the counties, though, have opted, because since they've already been through that auction process and didn't sell, a lot of the counties and state entities, what they do is they just have this big, massive inventory that you can comb through, and you can literally buy the property directly from the county or directly from the state without ever having to go to an auction. And since you're buying it directly, there's no bidding competition. And so the way the counties will figure out, and again, it varies state to state, it varies county to county, but in general, what your price is, once you figure out, you do all the research, you find a property, it's a good asset, and you decide you want to acquire it. So there is an application process, and you send that into the state entity or the county. And all they do is they punch in the information for that particular property and calculate how much is owed in back taxes, penalties, and interest. And that's the price of the property. So you're literally, now sometimes the price of the property is several years back taxes. It's not going to be 1 year's back taxes, penalties, and interest. It could be 7 years back taxes, penalties, and interest. It could be 11 years back taxes, penalties, and interest. It could be 4 years back taxes, penalties, and interest. It doesn't really matter, though, because it's still a fraction of what the property is worth. And so we teach our clients, and we acquire properties. That's the process that we use today. And by doing that, it takes a little bit more effort, takes a little bit more expertise, and at the same time, the profit is far greater than going to a tax sale.
I know when we were talking about this the other day, you had a couple of examples of just properties that you had bought, your clients had bought. You have a couple of examples just so people can see kind of what you're talking about. And just to be clear, everybody, the properties Tony's going to show are ones that are actually like they looked at when they were bought, not like after it was renovated or anything like that. Like these are properties as they were when they were bought.
I think that's a really important point, because as you see them is exactly what they look like when we acquired them. These are like the active, what we call them. This is the property in its original state before it got renovated, if it got renovated. And so I'll show you the first one. Pull that up for me. So this property is on a street called Palo Alto, and we acquired that house that you're looking at right there for $7,560. That's total purchase price.
Wow.
And so it did need work on the inside, but we didn't do the renovations. All we did is once we had the deed of the property, we literally just hired a local real estate agent. They put a for sale sign on the front of the house, and literally within a couple of weeks, we had it sold for $30,000.
So let me get that clear. So you bought it for $7,500. Was that the right number? And you bought it for sold it
$7,560 to be exact.
Okay, okay, $7,560. When we'll lose that $60 because that's important. And you sold it for $35,000.
$30,000.
Okay, and what did you do to this wonderful property?
Yeah, and again, we didn't do anything. So there was some kind of old furniture and stuff in there. All we did is clean it out. Put a lockbox on it, and we didn't even, again, we hired someone to clean it out. I didn't go in and clean it out. We hired someone to clean it out. And what we did, when we sell properties, when we sell properties that are out of state, what we do is we take a house like that, and we look in that neighborhood. So you can pull up on Zillow, right? And you can see the different properties that have sold in the exact same neighborhood. So what we do is we look for a real estate agent who is actively selling properties in this neighborhood. This is their neighborhood. This is the area that they focus on. And you'll see that some of these agents, they've sold 50, 60, 70, 80 properties, in the same neighborhood. And so that's the person we're going to contact. And that's the person who we're going to give the listing. And that's all we did here. And that is incredible, Tony.
I mean, It's a house like that's, it's obviously not the Palace of Versailles here, but it is a house for $7,560. And folks, that's why I wanted you to meet Tony, because, imagine being able to learn from a person who knows how to pull this off. And I knew you told me the other day, Tony, didn't you have a list of 20 some odd thousand properties that one county had to pick between?
It's a state entity. That property came off that list. There's 20,400 properties on that list right now as I'm speaking to you. There's another market that we're working in right now with similar types of properties, and there's 7,000 properties on that list right now. That's just 2 lists in the entire United States of America. And so, if you want to call it the big secret or the big skill set necessity, is you really do have to know how to do the research, though. You really do have to know how to identify the good properties on a 20,400 property list. That's where our expertise come in. That's what we've developed over these past 30 years.
Yeah, and I want everybody to be clear on that. Like, every property does not look like this one, which is a really nice little house for $7,560. Like, I'd buy it yesterday because it's such a no-brainer. But a lot of the properties that end up on the list that Tony's talking about are useless properties. These are little strips of land that just are from a surveyor's mistake, the drainage ditches, just things like that. But there are gems on there, like this one is a gem. And, that's a quick turnaround for, let's call it $20,000, $7,500 purchase, $2,500 clean out, just roughly speaking. That's astounding.
Well, that's astounding. Yeah, because if you think about it in percentages, right? Even if we would have netted 15,000, which we didn't, we netted more than that. But even if a person only netted 15,000, that's doubling your money. That's 100% return. Like, where is anybody going in any investment where you have a hard asset, and it's not just the property value, you have the land value, and it's very, very difficult to any other type of real estate investing and make those types of returns that safely.
Yeah, I would say impossible. And, I also think for you out there, I'm personally not a huge fan of big renovations, unless you're a professional in that business, or unless you're going to go into it big time and have your own crews. I think if you're going to do an occasional, fix and flip, that's a hard business because you don't have the leverage over the contractors. You don't have people to do things. They're all busy. They charge premium prices, and when you're not a regular customer, it's really a very difficult thing to do. I really like this plan better, where you're basically getting these little properties, doing minimal, like just clean it out and sell it, take your 15 or 20 grand and move on to the next one. That's just my thought on it.
It is actually a strategy of ours, and we call it our sell as is strategy. So we go into properties knowing that we're going to flip them and sell them as is. If we want to renovate properties, we're going to use a little bit different strategy to acquire properties that we're going to fix up and rent out for positive cash flow. So there is multiple different strategies on our acquisition side. So we are going to have a list of criteria for sell as is properties when we go into a list. I'll show you a couple of more here. I'll show you 2 more that were actually sell as is, similar to this one. We acquired this property here, and this is on Rosemary, and a little bit nicer property than the last one. A little bit nicer neighborhood. We paid $15,700 for that property. And that property, we didn't even have to list it. We got the deed to that property, and there's a person that lives locally in that neighborhood, and they do a lot of fix and flips. And so he's one of those wholesaler type of people who likes to do all the handiwork themselves. And they approached our property manager, who was there getting it cleaned out, and we sold this property for $30,000. So it was a really, really, when I say a really quick flip, I'm talking as we're cleaning it out, we get approached and we sell it to the local guy who does fix and flips for $30,000. So minimal expenses to get it cleaned out, and we're still going to make a minimum, about a $10,000 profit on that one transaction there.
It's so cheap for $15,000. Wow.
But there's that, and you can do 1 a month, right? And that'd be an extra $10,000 a month. You can do 2 a month. That's an extra $20,000 a month on transactions like these. The reason why we focus on these types of investments for our clients is most of our clients don't have a ton of real estate investment experience. So these are perfect, what we call basic strategies, where we're just showing people how to get involved in real estate at a very, very discounted price and make a quick profit so they can start building confidence and do bigger deals in the future. And that's really our big strategy with our beginning investors. So I want to show you this one that we acquired. So we bought that house exactly as you see it there for $2,946.
No, you didn't. you serious?
I actually have all the recorded documentation to show that we bought that house for $2,900.
I believe you. I'm just looking at that house, and I just can't believe that anybody in America, even you, the world-class expert, bought that thing for $2,900. That's amazing.
So this is an interesting one. This particular property actually had people still living in. And so all we did is, as you and I have discussed before, there are companies out there, LLCs, they go out and they just buy a bunch of rental properties and they get overextended. And so what ends up happening is, so it was an LLC that owned this property previously, and the couple who was living there were renting it. So they're paying rent this whole time.
No way.
And the person who owns the property is not paying their property taxes. So they even have a lease agreement. So all our property manager does, they go in, they meet with the couple, show them that we are the current owners, and just had them sign a new lease agreement. So now we acquired it for $2,960, and overnight we already have tenants in it who've been living there for years anyways, and now we have a cash flowing property without having to fix it up.
If you remember, what was the rent? Do you happen to remember?
$800 a month.
$800 a month. So you could essentially pay off all of the expense in 4 months and have $200 left over.
In essence, correct.
That is amazing.
There's a couple of different things that we feel very strongly about. And when you look at these fix and flip house shows, there's always a mortgage on all of these properties. And we love the idea of having debt-free real estate. We discuss in our trainings and we discuss with our clients our philosophies on debt-free real estate. And my early mentor, a gentleman by the name of Dante Perano, would make this comment because he doesn't like debt. Maybe that's where I got my debt-free real estate investing philosophies from as well. He says, it's very difficult to go bankrupt when you have no debt.
This is true. Yeah, you don't need to, because you look at something like this, and let's say that your operating expenses with fix up and everything were 40%. Just let's say that for sake of argument. That means that each month on an $800 a month rent, you'd have about, what is that, 60%, $320 a month in just positive cash flow.
Yeah, these properties here, because again, there's no mortgage on them. So our expenses, sure. Our top line expenses, the most expensive we're going to see on these properties is 25 to 30%.
You're talking like 70 to 75% margin on it. So
yeah, absolutely.
$600 a month cash flow.
Yeah, and that's very, very consistent for us.
I can imagine, like, for you sitting out there, you acquire this little house and all of a sudden you have a cash flow, say, after expenses, $600 a month. You're able to pay yourself completely back for the purchase price after 4 months. And you've got this little asset, which naturally could be resold. Do you have any idea, Tony, what the resale value of that or what places go for in the neighborhood?
Yeah, that probably would sell right around $80,000 right now.
So you have a nice choice. You have the rich man's choice. Should I take $80,000 off my $2,600 investment or $2,800 investment, or should I just take $600 a month in cash flow and have this asset that just increased my net worth?
Yeah, and then it's in a market that where real estate's appreciating, and when you have tenants who are already taking care of the property, it's a very good idea to not disrupt that, let it cash flow. And the other thing that if you start looking down the line, right, if you start looking at your future and you're accumulating properties like this that cash flow in this manner, you go out, you do a few more flips, like the ones I was showing you, the sell as is, and then you turn around and buy a really nice cash flowing asset. And you go do a few more flips and you turn around and buy a really nice cash flowing asset. And you do that for a couple of years. I mean, now you have people, like we have clients right now. I have a client, his name is Wayne. He got downsized during the pandemic. He was a little ticked off about all of that, and he just, when he came in to our trainings and became a client, he was really focused on proving, what he was capable of doing. And so he has MS. I mean, when I say he has MS, he has very limited mobility. And he came in and in his first year acquired 23 properties, 23 houses. Because what he was doing the same thing I was talking about. Like he'd buy a property, turn around, flip it, build up some capital, end up renovating your property. Today, now this is 2 years later, today he has 11 properties that are fixed up and rented out that bring in $105,000 a year in cash flow.
That is, that is so wonderful for this guy who has MS and is having, MS can be really, really devastating to people.
Not only does he have these cash flowing assets, but he owns the asset, and he owns the asset free and clear with no mortgage on it. And so
this guy is probably, I don't know exactly, but probably almost a millionaire, or maybe more than a millionaire on net worth now. And he's got 100,000 a year coming in. It's wonderful.
If he stopped today, he'd be okay, right? He's the opposite of stopping today, right? Now he's now he's great at it. Now he's super good at it. And so if you can imagine, like, where will Wayne be in 2 years? Where will Wayne be in 3 years? Where will his cash flow be 2 years from today? What will his asset base be 2 years from today? Let me tell you what Wayne's not worried about: gas prices. Let me tell you what Wayne's not worried about: inflation. Let me tell you what Wayne's not worried about: a recession hitting. You know why? Because when a recession hits, his cash flow is not going to change.
Exactly true. That is so great. And, I think that really speaks to how really anyone can do this. But by anyone, what I mean is anyone who's willing to do the work, willing to do the learning, and then go out and do it. That's what I mean by anyone. And if that describes you, then this is definitely a way for you to get ahead in life. So what I've done, because obviously you're going to want to learn from Tony and learn the ins and outs of this, because it is appealing. And I put my own word on it. This works. Tony is the real deal. He's been doing this since the 1990s. He's been teaching it for many, many years. And I know many of his students. I know Tony really well. And this is the real deal. So if you're going to do tax sales, what are you really looking for? You're looking for properties at great prices. This is the way to do it. So Tony put together a 3-module, what he calls crash course, to get you started and get learning. The link is on the screen. It's learnfromtony.com. It'll also be below. And Tony, you could describe it a little bit, because you're the master of this. So I'll let you describe.
Really what the crash course is designed to do, because I can tell you this, Bob. There are a million questions that just popped into everyone's head right now as we're discussing, like, how did that happen? Where do I get the list? Like, which counties, right? All these questions are coming up. And so we put this crash course together really to educate people. There's a lot of information out there, a lot of misinformation on investing in taxing certificates, tax sales, tax sale investing out there. There's actually more misinformation than good information out in the marketplace today. What I really wanted to do in this crash course is give people a very, very thorough understanding, not only of exactly how it works, but more specifically, our specific strategies that we've carved out over 30 years on how we do it, which is completely different than anybody else out there doing it. Our niche markets, our niche strategies, the way we evaluate properties, the way we find great properties on a list of 20,000. I mean, if it was commonplace, there wouldn't be 20,000 properties on that list anymore. And so all of those things come into play. So what we did with our crash course is, in those 3 modules, you're going to be hard pressed to not have all your questions answered. But the other thing we do in that in the 3 modules is there's a way for you to post questions, and my experts in my office right here will answer those questions every single day. So we really give you a chance to walk away after that 3-module course to have all of your questions answered. And then it also is going to discuss how to become a client of USTLA here, if that's something that you would have an interest in doing as well. And you can team up with us, and we can guide you in the future.
Yeah, and for everybody, I think that I feel this way. I've spoken about this at length. When you're taking on something new, the smartest thing you can do is partner up and learn from people who know what they're doing. It's very difficult to build something from scratch, has a lot of dead ends, which usually in business translates to a lot of lost money. You want to learn first and then do it. And this is not overly difficult. I've actually seen Tony's teaching materials, and really good, really clear, and very doable, I would say. This is not something it's like you have to be a NASA level scientist to do. A regular person who just has some common sense and is willing to learn and apply a system can do this. It's a very down-to-earth business, I would call it.
When you go to the crash course, you'll see my documentation. I show copies of the deeds right in the training, so that you know and understand that everything we do here is public record. So I have nothing to hide, and I have everything to show.
Yes. So for you out there, go check this out. Tony's 3-module course is a couple of hours, not long. And I promise, as soon as you click on the first video, you'll start to get it. It's interesting. It's fast paced. It's not, draggy and running on. And go check it out and give yourself a chance to evaluate this opportunity, because that's what this is about. It's about a chance for you to fairly evaluate the opportunity and say, is this something that appeals to me? And if it's something that appeals to you, do it. Don't spend years thinking about it. One of the differences between successful people and failure people, the successful people see something appealing. They say, I'm going to try that. I'm going to go do it. And they do. And that's how they find their success. You can't be sitting on the sidelines. Like, you can't score any points if you're not on the field. So you got to get on the field. So thanks, Tony. I really appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you.
So for you out there, thanks for being with us. And let me know how you like Tony's crash course. Go to learnfromtony.com and grab it. And I'll see you next time.